Hey, good morning, Highliners. I'm Josh Johnson, Superintendent, Valley City Public Schools. And as we announced, joining today, we have a couple experts on school facilities helping us to provide some information, answer some questions, bring some highlights to the citizens of Valley City. And so quick introductions here before we jump right in. We have Kyle Kavami with Icon and Mike Barsness, industry expert and alumni, Valley City High School, class of 1986.
1986, absolutely.
So we're excited both these gentlemen are here today. Guys, just a quick introduction to yourselves, background, and help the viewers get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thanks for having us, Josh, and everyone watching in. My name is Kyle Kavami with Icon Architectural Group, and my role at Icon is really just to help facilitate schools across the state, help understand what needs to be done, different ways to do it, build consensus, get the information out to the community and let the communities decide. The mechanisms that Valley City is using are the same that the rest of the state uses, and so my job is just to get good information, good solutions, and get them out to the communities that we serve.
And good morning. My name is Mike Barsness. I'm recovering from the mother of all colds here this week, so bear with my voice a little bit. I'm a construction manager, project management and estimating. Been doing it for about 38, 39 years. Actually, the first job site I stepped foot on was here in Valley City with Richard O'Brien back in the mid-'80s after I graduated in '86, like Josh said. So my role with construction companies nowadays is estimating projects and managing them through to fruition, completion of the project.
What's really cool is having Icon, which is a North Dakota-based company, having Mike, alumni of Valley City High School, both of you guys, and all the work that you've put in. And so let's jump into it and get to some of those burning questions that we've been asked over the last couple weeks. You guys know March 25th, Facility Committee gave a recommendation to our school board. School board made that decision to call for a referendum, and school district has been committed to getting the information out there. We've said factual, we've said timely and transparent information, and so there's been a couple of burning questions that purpose of today is to get those questions answered, get that information out to the public, just make sure also that our public knows about the upcoming meetings as well. And so Mike, you're first. Let's jump in. So capital maintenance is another name for it. Facility condition assessments, I think in the industry is what we refer to the process when a company such as yours comes in, they do a complete dive into looking at the facilities. And so you talk about facility condition assessment. What is it? What does your industry do? And then talk a little bit about what you guys found when you came in and kind of go back into the history of that a little bit.
Sure thing, Josh. One thing that I've noticed over the last 10 or 15 years of working in North Dakota, and North Dakota's got a real great tradition of using what you've got and reusing what you have. And facility condition assessments have really become important in our industry, and it's really a way for us, to sit down with a client, come in and look at the facility as it stands today. The conditions of things like roofs and mechanical systems and electrical, to really get a sense of how your building is performing today when compared back to a modern purpose-built facility. We look at things like ADA codes, making sure that, handicap accessibility is right. Envelopes, building envelopes are a huge part of it. Roofs, siding, windows, things that you need to have to protect, your building integrity and the things inside it. HVAC systems and electrical systems are very important as well, especially with changing codes over the years with fresh air and lighting and different things that are required for modern educational facilities these days. And now another thing that's really come into it is life safety issues, fire sprinkler systems, proper fire codes, and more so today in today's environment more than anything else, secure entrances, a way to protect your buildings and your occupants in the building and make sure you're funneling people through the right ways in a way that entrance to the building can be monitored and protected.
I would say, Mike, we've been quite in depth in looking at the assessments. You actually came in 2018, and that was our first facility condition assessment did. And then, as we know, we went through COVID. We kind of jumped into this whole study or exploration of our school facilities. You were back in 2021. We updated some numbers in 2021. Inflation, cost of construction continued on the rise, and we updated again all that information out within our community. And so now we're saying, when you look at our systems, the overall, what our estimated cost is $37 million. We just talk about the process that you guys use in the industry to arrive at a number like that. And if you have to tell the citizens of our school district, really what are the most significant systems issues that would need to be significantly repaired and or replaced?
Right. You know, basically we go through the process. We basically tour an entire building and we look at the individual components of a building. And as a construction company myself, we've got, you know, very real-time access to the costs of these types of things, you know, such as windows, such as roofing systems, such as mechanical systems. A big thing that ties into our facility condition assessment as we're learning about these buildings and touring these buildings is trying to get an idea of the lifespan of certain components of a building. You know, we know through experience that 20 to 25, maybe 30 years is maximum on a roofing system, especially, you know, with today's tar built up or EPDM roof systems. Mechanical systems, again, some components are starting to wear out after 20 to 25 years, you know, but can last up to 40 and 50 years with some certain types of boiler systems and things like that. But what we really truly see with a lot of buildings throughout North Dakota, not just Valley City, is really you've gotten the most out of those facilities, and you're at end of life with a lot of these systems. You know, when we're walking through a building, you know, we try and identify, you know, those items and kind of list it out on a, just like you do your budget sheet at home, an estimate sheet, something like that, where we can literally line item identify, you know, the things that are coming out of school district in the next 10 years and try and put a cost to that. So, you know, the school board and the business management part of Valley City Schools has a way to see what's coming at them and understand the cost implications that are coming that way.
Mike, we're going to give your voice a rest here in just a second, but two things with what you said I want to highlight, and we're going to talk about our webpage and how to access that information a little bit here. But our capital maintenance plan, the one that you created, put together for us, and then we've since updated line by line, that's on our webpage. We can link that and give access to that resource as well. And then I'm going to circle back around with you and ask how the maintenance costs compare on older infrastructure and what that cost comparison is on a new building. And so I'll circle back around with you and just ask you that question in a little bit.
Sure.
So, okay, so we talked about, you know, the facility condition assessments and that, all the information, and was looked at. Kyle, have you jump in here and talk a little bit about the process. We brought ICON on with the school district through our construction coalition committee and the work that the state initiatives looking at state funding we were working on, and just recognize the good work that ICON was doing across the state of North Dakota and all the great projects that you were doing. So we brought you on in March and really accelerated that in the fall when we started putting together facility advisory committee. And so talk a little bit about your role with the facility advisory committee, what you guys do, ICON, you know, not only specific to Valley City Public Schools, but just in general, what you do in this process.
Yeah, appreciate that, Josh. And I'm, you know, vocal with the group and with the community that what we do here isn't just a one-off situation just for Valley City, but I would say that, you know, getting this group together and committing to what they, excuse me, what they've been, you know, tasked with doing, which is understanding, you know, first and foremost, you know, we had the group come together. We made sure we had people from different walks of life. We made sure we had staff represented, but not too much staff. We have parents, we have business owners, we have people in the ag community, so that we have a group that represents your community. So they were charged from the school board to assess what's going on, look at all the information, and it's really powerful when the committee is tasked and held responsible for what's in the best decision for the community versus a prerogative of a superintendent or consultants or the school board. And so the first step of that is, touring the school and then taking that tour information along with the assessment information and connecting the dots for that group. And it was really powerful, people walking through the school that had not probably walked through those spaces. I think, the hack is such a great space, and sometimes that's the only space that people see. And so to take this group of community members, we had, a little under 20 people going through, looking at the space, getting their eyes on it, then looking at the data and kind of connecting the dots. And then the really amazing piece of that is that you take all that information, you take those facts, again, that they have with their own two eyes and the paper in front of them, and you say, what are your priorities? What are the things that you feel need to be addressed? And as a community, group, they came up with their priorities, and then we worked through, tirelessly, many multi-hour meetings. What are the different ways to solve those priorities? What rises to the top? What works well with another piece of the puzzle? How do you set everything up to where it makes sense? And then most importantly, how do you financially represent a solution and show that this is justified, this makes sense? And what's great is that wasn't us making that decision, it was the group making that decision where they have the costs. They have their priorities, and they went through many, many different options to figure out what made the most sense and made the biggest impact.
That's great, and I think that's the important part of it is looking at the many different solutions that, after they toured and went through and they started looking at the background information, and there was a lot of, like you said, a lot of hours spent working through and talking and sharing what have you heard,
Yes.
Getting feedback from others beyond just the 17 people that were sitting around the table there as well. And then, as you know, then the charge that they had from the school board was to come with a recommendation, and they did so. They completed that assignment. They provided that recommendation to the board on March 25th. The board received that recommendation and made the decision to move forward calling for a referendum. And again, the importance of that decision was to ask the voters, to ask the people of Valley City, not just the representatives of this committee, not the 17, not just our staff, not the administration, but ask the voters of Valley City what they think is the best solution. And if the recommendation from the committee provided to the board, if this in fact is the right decision, is the right solution for this. And so let's talk about what was included in that plan and what's out there as far as the referendum goes. We'll highlight that, and then I'm gonna come back around, Kyle, and ask a question a little bit about the process that you guys use to come up with that design cost estimate. So it's a new 312 school that would be connected to Jefferson Elementary. For those of you that maybe don't know, Jefferson is our K-3 currently elementary school up near Hanfield. And so the idea is to be able to incorporate down the road pre-K into that school, turn that into a pre-K2. We would then close Washington Elementary, which is currently a 4 through 6 building. We would be able to have under a new school grades 3 through 12. So we would close Washington. We would close the educational part of Valley City High School, including 1919, 1948, 1958, and majority portions of 1971. We would close the district office, and we'll talk a little bit about the significance of the consolidation for cost savings for us. So that's what the new school would all encompass. So essentially, K-12 is connected all under one roof. And again, we'll talk about operational efficiencies and what that creates for educational purposes as well as budgets. And so we'll do some demolishing of that. We're going to remodel the Highlander Activity Center where we're sitting right now, constructed in 2003, and then address the safety and security components as part of Jefferson Elementary. And so that's the proposed plan included in that with the $46 million price tag that will come to the vote of the citizens. And so, Kyle, if you would, talk about the process ICON uses to go about designing the program processes, and then ultimately at the end of the day, right, to come back with that cost estimate and say this is what we believe the cost will be to accomplish what's included in that plan.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. And this is a multifaceted process, and we have partners that we work with that help bring information that's local and accurate and actual true information of built projects. I think the important thing is to think of that the scope of this project fundamentally we shifted, and I think we went to the the thoughts of how can we make the maximum impact, understanding debt limits, understanding tax impact to the voters. And I think the big thing was the shift where we decided that the athletic spaces, the performing arts space, and the auditorium specifically were spaces that maybe didn't make this initial phase, and that we had these great spaces already as part of the community that we could use. And so we could significantly reduce the square footage from the the $65 million number that's been shared, so that we could be very efficient. And I think that, well-organized, educational space planning, an understanding that a modern classroom needs to be flexible, needs to allow collaboration, needs to allow really students to learn the way they are learning now, as opposed to forcing a more rigid structure that maybe the classroom was built for in 1919, as for example. And then looking at our cost estimating, we have such amazing data that's local, that's regional, that's relevant within weeks, that we can pull information together. And I think that rather than having maybe some broader strokes budget, we went through and understood a little bit more about how much square footage exactly do we need, and what is that being built for now in North Dakota, and allowing us to really be, I would say, to benefit from, it's a competitive market right now. There's been crazy price fluctuations, for years. But what we are seeing now is it's very competitive out there, and we're getting some really good results. And so by kind of targeting all of those different pieces, along with right sizing and creating efficiency, the space and the hack, understanding that there are things that we can use this amazing space for, and how that line kind of moves has been really pivotal as we've worked through, solutions that the group, that the administration, the team, we never even had on our horizon. As we worked through this process, different things unfolded that allowed us to accomplish these things, and ultimately the 3 through 12 unlocks these efficiencies that it was very hard for us to ignore as a group, and to think about what you can accomplish, and especially knowing that we're going to use as much space here as makes sense, as much space in the hack that is viable to use, efficient to use, and is good use of again, taxpayer dollars. Everything that we can reuse is one less thing that we have to build. And so going through that process is really, really important to us, and that's a big piece of how we ended up with such drastic different numbers.
Thing I really like about the state of North Dakota is just how close-knit. We know everybody from every corner of North Dakota, and it's, again, one of the things I think we all really appreciate about North Dakota. Icon has developed a strong reputation in construction of school facilities, and so as we reach out and we communicate and talk to colleagues across the field, there's been several projects that you guys have done. I think the thing that we've discovered in those conversations, and actually being able to witness in these projects that have been completed, is just the practical approach and being super efficient.
Yes.
With the taxpayer dollars. And so maybe, Kyle, if you would, and we're going to link down in this video as well, just some of those examples of what Icon has completed. And so maybe just talk about that approach a little bit.
Yep.
You've shared some of that with our committee, but that approach and what people would expect to see in Valley City here as far as a new facility goes. We've shared a 2D design laid out next to Jefferson Elementary. We're saving dollars. I think it's worth noting as well. Icon hasn't sent us a bill, won't send us a bill before June 10th, won't until this referendum passes and we start putting shovels in the ground. And so that's important to know as well. And so give people an idea of what that construction looks like and examples of what projects you completed. And
that's our whole model, is that we're trying to be responsive to the community, and we found that unfortunately there's other actors out there that maybe might give some folks bad names, and our approach in practicality is, let's spend the dollars where the students experience them, spend the dollars where we can maximize the impact. We want to make sure we have a secure, safe, easily identifiable entry. We want to make sure we have collaborative space, but then we also want to make sure that if you're designing, space for student commons, that does more than one thing. As you go through our building program, it's all about maximizing the efficiency of each space, and then understanding that if there's the back hallway, the back stairway, guys, that might not be the prettiest space, but if it's an emergency exit and that's all it's used for, let's put that money into classrooms. Let's be very aware of, we want the appropriate amount of glass, but not too much glass. And it's so interesting, as security is such a big issue, the amount of glass in classrooms specifically has gone up and down, and where you want it and where you don't, and how you control sight lines. So we're very cognizant of that, and just trying to make sure that what we're building now is a space that will be modern, efficient. People will come in and say, this is a great space, but I don't think anyone's going to come in and say, Josh, your office is huge. What are you doing here? Because to be frank, we've cut your office from the project.
We have, and I think the Highlander Activity Center actually is a good resemblance of what you're referencing,
Yes.
talking about. Well, we have thousands of visitors to our community that come every single year, and so thanks, Kyle, for that. I appreciate finding this out on this story as well, that I actually don't have an office going forward.
You'll be fine, and like Josh had mentioned, we're going to share pictures of our comparable projects. We work all across the state. And we're very proud of the fact that, a lot of people walk into our spaces and it's a nice space, no gold toilets.
Yeah. We, speaking about the Highlander Activity Center, we've over the last 22 years, believe it or not, age of this facility, minimal dollars that actually had to go in. Some of the things, roofing things, there's been some HVAC things that have occurred as well. Some of those just maintenance things, annual things that happen. Mike, a question that's been asked of us is, what would we be able to expect over the next 10 years, estimated annual maintenance cost or overall maintenance cost on a new building? Because the question obviously is that, well, have you factored in, there's going to be some of those maintenance costs that you're going to have to consider, even if it's a new building. New buildings get old, and so when within the industry, what do you account for with maintenance costs?
Excuse me. It's typical to see 1% to 2% of new construction cost of a facility for that next 10-year maintenance cost. And a lot of it goes back to what we talked about earlier is lifespan and expected lifespan of systems. So when you've got mechanical systems that have a lifespan of 25, 30 years, you've got roofing systems that are 20 years out there, warranties that are part of new construction with siding systems and things like that. If there are issues with those systems, they're usually taken care of by warranty, or very rare just because they're within their lifespan. So some of the maintenance that you might see might be, site-related stuff, maybe asphalt maintenance. You certainly don't want to put a roof up there and just let it sit for 10 years. You want to get up there and check it every year. There's usually something that needs to be caulked or whatever else. But those are usually your maintenance costs. A lot of stuff that you can do very easily with your own staff. And it's more so just protecting what you have and making sure you can get another 10 years or another 20 years out of those systems in that first 10 years. Does that answer your question?
It does, and so using some numbers, applying that to a $46 million project, we're looking about $500,000 over the for 10-year on the low side of it, up to $1 million. And so the question is where those dollars going to come from? That's a building fund allocation. We're fortunate in Valley City Public Schools to be able to have a building fund, and so that'd be a great example of how we utilize the building fund for that. We know that Jefferson, again, built in the 60s, would have some maintenance costs as well. We've put some mini split air conditioning units. We know that there's going to be some costs, so that's also going to have to get factored in. We talked about updating to make sure the safety security component is addressed, but part of that 10-year maintenance plan, we're going to have to consider what we're going to do with some of the maintenance part, knowing that those systems, again, are older than what we would see in a new building. So.
Right, and what we have found with Jefferson is, through the capital maintenance processes, that's the easiest building for you to maintain right now.
Yeah.
And which led into some of the group's decision with the current project as it stands right now.
Kyle, I will note and make sure there's a record of this as well, is that the architects from the 60s that had this wild idea to build pods.
It was not us.
Okay, yeah, nothing to do with Icon.
We are in the removing of pods business all across the state. So
and thankfully nobody else is designing pods anymore either.
But nonetheless, for our primary grade levels, we keep classes at a smaller level. I think we're in good shape for a number of years.
And operationally, it works really well.
It does, yeah. So another question that has been asked of us is why this plan? And addressing the why is significant. It's not a surprise at all that the age of our buildings are older than most schools across the state of North Dakota. We figured 73 years plus. We love the history of our schools. There's actually, if you look back prior to 1919 being built, where we're sitting actually was home of a couple historic buildings. buildings in Valley City, Ritchie 1, Ritchie 2, that really resonates with some of our seniors in Valley City. But there's need to replace those systems. We talked about it and we've addressed, so that's a part of it. The systems that have exceeded their useful life, significant dollars are going to go into repair and or replacement of those. In addition to that, we talked about the modernization that came up in conversation. So ADA, the difficult part of it, particularly at Valley City High School for us with ADA, and I don't know if people fully recognize and understand. I've heard stories from all the way back to the 70s where because we're built on a hill, we have 16 feet actually of elevation difference from where we're at right now all the way up to our north office, the north entrance of the high school, 1919. And in that, there's 21 different levels. And so historically, from the 70s, 80s, I've heard stories of classmates picking up students, lifting up students in wheelchairs, broken legs, whatever else that may be, just simply because of the challenges. We have lifts, we have elevators, but the reality of that, modernizing that would require replacing those, and there's significant costs with that as well. And so it's a unique challenge, and it's simply the fact that we're built in the position we're in. I would challenge any school out in the state of North Dakota, or you guys for that matter, to find a school with 21 different levels in a connected building.
Yeah, I think you guys take the cake there. And I think an important thing to note is that that dollar figure that Mike was talking about, that doesn't renovate the space. That is repairs, and that is getting our space accessible. And currently, as it sits now, the most accessible path with the school is to actually exit the school and then come around the side and come in. So it's a big issue that I think folks should really, come and see for themselves.
And that was part of the facility advisory committee. One of the first proposals was let's just build a breezeway, because again, you have one long ramp in the interior of the school, or you build a breezeway on the outside of the school. And I think the committee looked at that and said it was not practical. Yeah. So safety, security address already, 21st century learning. When schools were built in the 1919, in the 40s, the 50s, education's obviously changed significantly since then. Learning spaces for students, special education, physical therapy, occupational therapy, collaborative learning spaces, things that you guys, as you're designing schools, you're building schools, are included in the 21st century, I guess, if you want to call it such. I don't know if you want to just share, or you can reference and talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the spaces now and you think about the way students learn, you think about, being a one-to-one district, everybody having technology, everybody working together in small groups and large groups, different classrooms actually collaborating together, different grades collaborating together. Maybe just the existence of Wi-Fi itself, and electricity and those needs. To create a modern classroom, it's all about flexibility and it's all about access. How do you give students the ability to be in the space or be in the group so that they're actually able to learn and learn effectively? Understanding special education and title and all these different things just didn't even exist in 1919. So a long linear classroom made a lot of sense when you had three rows of 9 kids, and they had a chalkboard up at the front. And now if you go into these classrooms, there's a chalkboard, and then there's a whiteboard on top of the chalkboard, and then there's a smart board on top of the whiteboard on top of the chalkboard.
So do you consider air conditioning as a modern consideration, or is that just something that is given in construction these days? Obviously, I'm being a little bit facetious with that question.
Well, you are required to, there is air turnover requirements in modern buildings. Whether or not you want to put an air conditioning unit in that, you do have to turn over the air per code. And so there are requirements there. Can you get around not putting air conditioning? I'm sure that there are some places out there in the world that maybe have done that, but when you go through the effort of creating fresh air, it's the change to do that is so minimal, and it's also probably the reason why there's no modern car that has no air conditioning.
Well, and plus we're seeing more advents of summer school activities. Schools are used much more in the summertime than they used to be, even when I was going to school here, and so now it gets pretty hot in the summertime sometimes, and you start to see needs for those types of systems.
Another why, and really emphasizing, it's a question, it's a comment that we've received often, is cost savings efficiencies. We're saying that a new facility connected under one roof is going to bring significant cost savings. Where are those cost savings actually coming from? Consolidation of our school facilities. We said we're going to sell Washington Elementary, we're going to sell the district office, we're going to retire portions of the high school. With that, significantly less square feet in a new school, aligning that or right-sizing that. We refer to that to our current enrollment, to our current programs, to our current needs. With that as well, just looking at evaluating our current programs offered, figuring out where we're duplicating or actually, tripling up on different services and programs. Example is a cafeteria. We've talked about physical education spaces. We've talked about library spaces, those kind of common shared spaces that in a new school, we'd have one kitchen, one cafeteria. All K-12 students would have access to that. And so with that, there's staffing changes that are going to come along with that. There's maintenance cost savings that we've already highlighted, utility cost savings as well that we've spoke to. So in addition to that, just the operational efficiencies for us from an educational standpoint. One question, a concern maybe that's been brought up is, well, is it okay, is it safe to have our kindergartners in the same building, potentially interacting in a common space with our seniors? And I grew up in Devil's Lake and went through 3 different separate schools, an elementary, a middle school, and a high school. Most recently, I was in Oaks Public Schools, and all K-12 students were under one roof. And the great thing is a lot of our parents in Valley City had that similar type of experience, K-12 experience, and I think would tell you that most often it's a benefit versus a negative in any sort of conversation, from the older students helping to inspire, to role model, to read to the elementary. It brings a sense of school pride when you're all under one roof and working together. And so obviously from a school standpoint, there's strategic ways of being able to make sure that your elementary students are learning in spaces that are in a different place than where our senior high school students are.
And we're seeing that as a trend all across the state and the region, really. Of the K-12 just creates so much efficiency. Those spaces that you mentioned, those are all large spaces that are now being able to be used by the entire district. And also, too, the districts that have gone to the K-12 route, thinking of like Grafton, for example, no one's regretting that. They all appreciate that because, again, the older kids, I do think, act a little bit better when the younger kids are right there. And there is a sense of pride, and it's a small community. You say something and your first grader comes back and says, I heard this from so-and-so. It doesn't take too long to connect the dots. And so I do think that it's a good thing, to be a part of.
Yeah, I love the efficiency part of it, and just the high liner all together and under one roof, and get your good examples again, like a Grafton, all under one roof. So, okay. So as we go forward, we've committed to our public, to our community, things like this, where we're getting information out there. It's factual, it's timely, it's transparent information. And so we have a couple of public meetings that are up and coming. Our first public meeting scheduled for next Tuesday, April 22nd, Valley City High School, North Gym. Invitation to anybody, everybody to come. We'll present some information, highlight. We have 3 other meetings that are scheduled. All that information is on our website. We have Q&A sessions that are also planned. Those are intended to be informal. We're going to create a virtual link with that as well. So if there's individuals out there that have questions, they watch this and they write down their questions, or they come to the presentation, they don't get a chance to ask those. That's the intent of those Q&As is to be able to come, to interact. We'll stay there as long as we absolutely need. I know you guys are going to jump in. You'll be available virtually. So, Mike, if they want to ask you about a maintenance question, they'll be able to ask that, or Kyle, they can ask us about this plan and what this means long-term for our school district. So that's the intent of the Q&As as well. The web page has a tax impact calculator, so easy to be able to put in your residential tax statement, that information, to be able to learn, understand what the impact this would be if it passes on June 10th. Absentee voting information, we want to make sure that people know that absentee voting can begin as soon as May 1st, and so they apply. Ballots are sent out. They can submit all the way up to June 9th at 4 o'clock, I believe is the cutoff time to get your absentee ballot in, and then voting in person in the district office on June 10th. And then again, just the caveat with this is reach out, contact us. I know already at some of the first initial meetings we had citizens that were there that had questions. You guys sat and spent over an hour just answering those specific questions about the what, the why, the how, and I know that was really appreciated by some of those citizens. So we welcome everybody else as well. If you're viewing this live and or after the fact, reach out to us. We have a direct email address. We can put you in contact with Mike or Kyle as well, and so just appreciate you guys, appreciate your time, your willingness to come here. Mike, your willingness to come back. I thought it'd maybe, it'd be great if we could maybe have our tech guys put a little video or something. There's some rumors about you playing some roles in the theater and marching down some aisles or things. But we don't want to hold anything against you, Mike.
Yeah, I think that stuff needs to stay in the yearbooks where it was at.
So, 1986, Mike Barsness, for any of you that have a yearbook sitting around, we'll make sure that information gets out there. A young Mike Barsness, mind you. So, Mike, as a Highliner, we really appreciate you coming back and your interest in this project.